Welcome to our podcast On the Ground Up, where we interview startup founders exploring their journeys, their success, challenges, and lessons learned. We hope you'll be inspired in discovering what it takes to build a thriving startup. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, and here with us today, we have Ghalib Suleiman, who is the co-founder and CEO of Polytomic. Ghalib, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
So a little bit about Ghalib. He has been working in data and analytics for over a decade. He is currently building Polytomic, the first anywhere ETL platform, which is backed by top investors, including Y Combinator, Caffeinated Capital, Elad Gil, Jack Altman from Lattice, and Jeff Kessler from Box. So great background. I love the team that's invested in you. Before we kind of dive into your company and talk about what you're solving in the world, where are you calling in from today?
Right now, New York. Usually I'm in San Francisco, but today I'm in New York.
Great. Are you originally from SF or New York or somewhere else?
I'm hardly American, maybe by the sounds of my accent. No, I'm from a country called Oman in the Middle East, next door to Saudi Arabia and Dubai.
That's great. Lots going on out there in terms of growth and innovation. All sorts of companies we're talking to from the Middle East, which is really exciting. Exciting times for a lot of companies that have product ideas and can build.
For sure.
But your company, I like the problem it's solving, and we'll kind of dive into that. Before we do that, give us a little background of your history, really from an adolescent all the way up. Like, what was it that shaped you into one day becoming a founder, an entrepreneur?
Oh, goodness. Well, I don't really have a story that says I've been running lemonade stands since I was 7 years old. So there's nothing too romantic about it. I never really intended to start a company growing up, even going through college. In college, I studied computer science and maths, intending to just get a job. Did a couple of years of grad school, more mathematics, really realized I liked software engineering. And so I even pondered academia, but ditched that and just got a job working in software. Eventually landed in machine learning and natural language processing, code, research, mathematics, sort of an overlap of all three. Moved to San Francisco in 2013. I was hoping to start a company with a good friend of mine. One of my best friends growing up was working in San Francisco at the time. We were going to be building the next WhatsApp. Nothing came out of that. There were some really harsh lessons learned from our adventure in 2013. Big one being, we just coded for about 6 months until our bank accounts ran low, and then we both got jobs at startups. We never spoke to customers. We never thought about the market. None of the usual discipline. It was completely discipline-less. Coded. There were no users in the end. That was it. Then worked at a startup called PlanGrid. That was quite most formative. PlanGrid, I joined them, goodness, they must have been about 25 people when I joined. They had just raised a VC round from Sequoia. They were a construction app, an app for the construction industry. And it was your classic startup growth story. I left them 4 years later. There were about 150 employees. So we went from 25 when I joined to about 350. And then they sold for just under $1 billion to Autodesk about 6 months after I left. That was probably the formative situation that led to me founding a company. I got to realize that founders are human beings just like you and me. I'd always assumed there were these otherworldly aliens who knew what to do, but the truth is quite far away from that. Everyone's just sort of trying to figure it out as you're going along to various degrees, right? Some founders more than others. But it was a very humanizing experience just joining so early. I got to start and then run the data team there. I was sort of the lone data guy, and then I hired people and they hired people and so on. But that was it. I could point to something that led to me founding a company, it was that. It was really 4 years of me. We wrote some in-house tooling on the data side. We bought a bunch, and it was really where I developed opinions on something that should exist in the market that did not at the time. Having an opinion on something I'd like to use and buy that just didn't exist is what ultimately led me to founding Polytomic. So again, no lemonade stands as a kid. Simply 4 years of grinding it out and experiencing problems firsthand was probably it.
That's great. How about your parents? Just curious, were they entrepreneurs?
No, doctors. Sort of in the Middle East, we do, especially from their generation, and even today, we do tend to be a bit conservative with jobs. But no, just both doctors who have been retired for ages.
Yeah. Well, that's great to know you've
There was
covered
no
it from
such
a
thing. I
good.
actually didn't really know anyone who started a technology business until I moved to, where was it? I worked in Boston for a bit. Yeah, it was a little shop there I worked at. And then certainly moving to San Francisco is what opened my eyes that startup founders are just normal people.
Yeah, and all over the place. I was just
Hmm.
there a few days ago, and yeah, you walk at any corner, it's almost you
Yeah,
can
exactly.
hear. Like we're having a dinner at a great place called Lamar, and it was the table next to us was they had their own little booth, and you just looked over, you could tell it was a startup by the conversation, by
It's
the
endless.
communication. And it's like everyone from a different country, trying to spend a little time together outside of the workplace, and proximity is great. If you want to build anything in technology, San Francisco is a great place to be.
Hmm.
So, talk to us about your Polytomic being in some ways, the data space, but with your background in data and being inspired by a problem that you were looking to solve with a product that you could buy that wasn't out there. What is it that you're building? What is the product that's serving the market today, and
Mm,
and what is it exactly?
sure. So Polytomic is a web app that moves data between systems. That's it. It's a very simple statement. The thing that it does that's unique is that the data sync market is and has been fragmented. So if you want to move data from, say, your CRM or your business systems into Snowflake, you go buy a particular type of vendor. It's a product. If you're going from your data warehouse into other systems, there's another pool of vendors to choose from. If you're moving data between your sales system and your finance system, well, there's another pool of vendors that don't touch databases, but they move data between business systems. And now there's a cottage industry of startups that do nothing except move data back and forth with spreadsheets. And so you can see how annoying this could be. When I was running a data team, it was actually quite annoying to have to just buy different vendors. I'd always begin with thinking, I just need to move data. That's it. But the industry is so fragmented, I'd have to think about, well, what systems are involved, what data volumes are involved, how frequent are these things going to be? And then there's a pool of vendors that do nothing except that. And so we're a data syncing and ETL tool. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load, which really means moving data and then transforming it in a data warehouse or from a data warehouse. But the plain English statement is we move data regardless of what systems are involved.
There's a lot of products out there that do movements of data. What makes you different? What's unique about your product in the market today?
The main thing is exactly what I covered, is that we cover all types of systems and all data volumes. It's really a very simple proposition. Often customers go, well, why would I buy 4 different products when I can just buy one? It's just that simple. There end
Wow.
up being many different technical problems to solve if you're doing what we're doing. So the regular user goes, well, I'm just moving data. What's the problem? But the reality is, depending on where the data is going to and from, it's a very different technical problem. But we've just decided to build the one platform so that the user can just stop at their proposition. Well, I'd like to move data. We can go, end of story. Don't think about anything more. We'll handle it.
And within a company, who is the buyer of your product?
It's actually splits, goodness, just about half and half. One half are data and analytics teams. So, really, my past self. These are people who are often running a data warehouse, something like a Snowflake or a Google BigQuery or a Databricks. These are people who need to hoover up data from all over the company into their data warehouse. They need to set up pipelines. That's where they bring us in for. And then those same people may be asked to pipe data from the data warehouse, sort of intel and interesting analytics, into the business systems, like user engagement stats and so on, piped in for the sales team. Now, that tends to be another pool of vendors that serve this use case, but again, we can handle it. And so the data team will just use us for that. The other half tend to be IT people on the business side. These are people who are often Salesforce admins, for example. They're maintaining the systems on the business side. They're often at the receiving end of requests from the business side. Salesperson or marketing person says, hey, I need data in my system from the finance system, or I need data in my system from the engineering systems, various product stats, or whatever it is. And again, both sides simply want to move data, whether it's your business IT person or a data and analytics person, but our customers types or personas, if you will, tend to be split between the two, depending on the use case. It's the same platform regardless.
Yeah, really cool. What's the challenge and the time frame it takes to use your product from, I don't know, subscribing to it or integrating with it, however it works? And you could share that if you want. And then, you decide to move forward with your platform and use it. How much of an education is there around it? Do I just log in and can I just start directing and connecting? This data needs to go into that system and this system's data needs to go into this system's data. Like, what's the process like?
Pretty much that. You log in, you connect us to your systems. Your database is going to have a username and password. Type that in so we can connect us to your sales system, wherever it is. And then you get going within 5 minutes. Usually we'll walk you through setting things up, but that's the nice thing. A lot of the vendors out there tend to be enterprisey, which obviously is good in some senses, security and so on. But when you have an enterprisey user interface, you can take weeks just to get onboarded. And for us, it really just comes down to minutes. The biggest obstacle for us with onboarding tends to be something like, oh, someone's on vacation. Someone at the customer's side is on vacation and they're waiting for this person to come back. But by and large, we've invested a lot in keeping things simple.
Yeah, really great. God, it sounds really great. What's the I mean, I don't know if it's maybe on your website. Is there a certain cost to it based on the volume of data that's shared? What's the model?
It's priced, just to keep things simple, it's priced per connection actually. So it really just depends on the number of systems you connect us to. And that's the main driver of the price. There is a volume component, but it kicks in quite late. You need to be moving a lot of volume. Obviously, if you're moving 10 billion records a month, there is going to be a volume component, but by and large, the vast majority simply pay a flat fee per connection.
And is there a services component too that someone would need when they buy your product?
There can be, yeah. I mean, realize our customers, it's everything from two-person startups to we've got Fortune 500 public companies. And so, of course, those on the higher end, they just tend to be busy, right? They tend to say things like, well, yes, we could set it up. Yes, it's easy, but you know what? Just do it for us. And so there can be a services component. It's not mandatory. Most people don't need it. The ones who do opt for it tend to be ones who just lack time to even invest those few minutes. So they want us to help set up things, and then we just walk away and they take over.
That's great. Well, talk to me about the journey of the idea. So you have the idea, it's a product you wanted, you had to build it yourself. From idea to build out, how long did that take? And was there an initial thesis that you began with and then had to make some pivots along the way to find the product market fit?
For sure. It was definitely not a straight path. Because I've worked in this industry for quite a while, in this market in particular, there were really no questions about what we were going to do. However, getting to product market fit, initially, we built something for customer support teams, which I love customer support teams, but it's a tough crowd to sell to. They're not the richest of departments when it comes to budgets and so on. We targeted their systems and piping data to their systems to help them have visibility on customer support tickets. Customer writes in, great, I see the email address, and we'd automatically show data regarding their product usage and so on, piped from the engineering systems. Now, naively, I thought, well, few people sell to customer support systems. Surely we could get a nice toehold by attacking that. Now, this was naive. There's a reason most people don't sell to customer support people, and it's because the departments tend to have smaller budgets, we'll say that. And we ran into a huge issue where people would get on sales calls repeatedly. They'd go, great, how do I sign on? We go, well, before you do, to even use this thing, we need access to the engineering database. So can you bring in the engineering team for a call to have them authorize this process? And at this point, we'd lose them because it's a rare customer support person who can willy-nilly take time from the engineering team. Engineering teams tend to hop to sales, they tend to hop to marketing, and finance desires. Customer support tends to be lower on the list. Now, I don't judge this. This is a mere fact of the market. And we really struggle to just make sales going down this path. I think we made one, and this was someone we worked with previously who knew us. It was the tightest of connections, and even then, it was only that person. Um, and so we just found out why few people sell to customer support, and then we ended up just targeting sales systems, which really helped us take off. We initially, by the way, coupled with all this, we had built the wrong user interface. It was just a cumbersome one. The vision for the company was always consistent. The actual execution of the UI and targeting the wrong team just took us astray. We at some point just reset and rebuilt the whole user interface in a completely different fashion to make things even easier to use, and targeted data and analytics teams and people with sales systems and business IT people. That's what ended up with us closing our first few customers and then raising our seed round.
Yeah, that's great. Oftentimes when companies go out and raise capital, they do it with ideas and they pitch and pitch and pitch and pitch, and they don't get the responses they want.
I was there. Yeah, we were turned down by about 50. Goodness, it must have been 50, maybe a bit more, even VCs after YC. And we had 0 customers, and I was pitching the vision. And the consistent piece of feedback was, the vision's great, we're sold. How are you going to get there from this? Pointing at the thing we had. And I'll always just wave it off and go, well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And at some point I realized, hang on, I keep saying this, and they keep saying, not good enough, in a very polite manner. Investors tend to be polite, which really just caused me to go, you know what? Instead of we'll figure it out, let's just figure it out now and switch things. Realize in the midst of all this, COVID lockdowns were fresh on everyone's mind. We graduated YC and COVID had hit, in fact, 2 weeks before YC was meant to end. So they actually just ended the batch when COVID lockdowns hit, and we were told, well, off you go, good luck. People tried to help as much as they could, but again, investors were all freaked out, locked up at home, wondering, the stock market had briefly crashed before government's money printers started. But in the meantime, it was really generally, an uncertain time filled with general doom and gloom. Well, we're not sure what's going on here, was a common refrain amongst investors. In the midst of all this, of course, we're trying to raise money over Zoom, locked up in our houses. And I had to just go on pitch after pitch after pitch. People are generally trying to figure out Zoom etiquette too at the time. These are people who really did not use Zoom often. San Francisco before COVID was very local based. I mean, I remember an early Snowflake sales rep visiting me at the office because, well, we were all co-located right in San Francisco. And that's what you do. You'd visit people's offices to sell to them. And so the whole business of raising money or transacting over Zoom was quite new to us in San Francisco. So it was a winding road. It absolutely was not straightforward at all. There were 1,000,001 rejections. And it really just took setting a hard deadline with me and my co-founder. Like, we're going to build this new version of the app and target different teams and then close our first customers by whatever month we designated. And after we closed our first 4 customers, everyone who said no came begging to invest. Now, I think there's probably some sort of conclusion here, which, maybe to other founders going through the struggle. And, you're really probably never as good as you think you are when times are good. And you're probably never as bad as you think you are when times are bad. If you're being rejected a lot, this doesn't mean that you're the worst person or the most incompetent person on the planet. Of course, conversely, it's good to be cautious. If everyone's adoring you, you're placed on some sort of pedestal. It's really worth realizing that, well, this is also probably temporary and you're probably not as good as people claim you are. I've seen both extremes at this point. Maybe I'm on the older side and maybe that helps as well. But, it's really best to just shrug and try to be Buddhist as much as you can, sort of float in some sort of emotionless state. But I've seen it all, and it was a very winding path for us, with a couple of false starts for sure.
Yeah. I like the fact, though, that, for you, the unlock was getting the clients to pay you and then taking that same vision with proof that you've got some product market fit back to the investors, and then the doors open up and, you're off to the races.
For sure. Yeah. And investors, at least certainly the Silicon Valley investors, most of them, this is it's a common trope, but it's true. They never really say no, go away. They'll always say things like not the right time. And that's probably the most common one. you're too early, and so on. And really what they're saying is implicitly, look, we don't like the current state of things, but if the state of things changes, come back to us, please. Thanks very much. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone has invested in or has missed an investment, right? Everyone has made a decision to not invest in some company that's ended up being huge. Even the big giants of today, Facebook and so on, all struggle to raise money from certain investors in the early days. And so it's always worth bearing that part in mind. I mean, I know some founders who are somewhat new to things tend to take rejections personally, but it's really not that. It's everyone's just trying to make an obvious buck as much as they can.
Yeah.
And that's really all the mechanism that's at play is.
Yeah. That's great to hear that. I mean, this is the last 24 months has been pretty crazy with raising capital and, you know, innovating, and the market's changed, and, the
For
path
sure.
to profitability is like line one when you talk to investors of, they want to see the fruits of their investing, the startups they invested in, the fruits of that labor, you know, hit a level that they can actually potentially make some exits and ultimately not burn down the company before they actually can scale and grow. So there's a lot of interesting things we are hearing for all the founders that come on, and some are very established, multiple startups. There's a guy, Alex Wu, who came on. He's got it's called CFO Advisors, and it's a fractional CFO service. And I think they're using AI now to do things differently, but a lot of times it's the metrics that they're sharing, that they're seeing from founders
Mm.
as well, focus on, which the metrics change based on the stage of where the company's at. And he was sharing that a lot of times the founders, if they haven't done it before, kind of don't always move with where the metrics should go. And so really fascinating podcast that was on a few weeks ago, worth listening to
For
for
sure.
anybody to kind of learn what is coming from VCs, what they're sharing, and kind of the insights that he's learned from them. But in terms of the market that's out there, how big of a market is there for your platform?
We've run estimates internally. This was actually when we applied to YC, and $100 billion market is not far off the mark. Maybe larger now. At the end of the day, SaaS has exploded and probably continues to explode, meaning companies have disparate systems whether they like it or not. In the olden days, you would have, one mainframe computer sitting in a room that contained all the company's data, and that was it. Now you do have things like, well, engineering people have their own data stores, salespeople have their own data stores, finance, marketing, customer success, and then now the data analysts have their own data stores as well. And so it's an extremely large market. People just need data moved. And companies beyond a certain size find it just unavoidable. Multiple systems sprout up. People need information from other systems in their home system.
How many systems on average do companies log into when it comes to, you've got your CRM, you've got
Yep.
your
Thing
look like?
is, yeah, the funny thing is that there's always this pendulum that swings in software between, I don't know if you've heard this, again, maybe another trope, but probably true, swings between bundling and unbundling, right? So you occasionally, within a particular area of the market, you have this explosion of disparate apps, and each one does one thing really well. At some point, people get sick of this, and then some app comes out, like ours perhaps, that bundles a bunch of functionality because everyone's sick of some crossing some threshold in terms of multiple apps. So we actually see this swinging back and forth in terms of an average number of apps within a company. I think it really just depends on the size of the company. But if we talk about startups and we're talking about, I don't know, let's say a 200 employee startup, I think something like 60 different apps is not so far off the mark.
Yeah.
Now, they don't all need to talk to one another, but they do all exist. This number is contracting with the new fundraising environment, right? With less money being available, and companies' budgets have shrunk. Before, you could make any sort of point solution, some targeting some tiny use case, and there's money, it's cheap, zero interest rates, and all that. Some department would buy your stuff, and we've seen a lot of this actually collapse and shrink, just in terms of the number of vendors. I think we're probably not done yet in terms of people canceling subscriptions. Really asking, do we need this?
Yeah. Really looking at the bottom line for sure. What If you look at today's market with a lot of these disparate systems and the tools out there that are helping move data around, why do you think there hasn't been one solution yet that's kind of done it all? Like what you're
Mm,
talking about sounds like the holy grail. Like
mm.
it seems,
I thought about this a lot when we were starting the company. I kept wondering whether I was overlooking something. I have a best guess. A best guess being one, markets are really large. Even if you target one vertical, you'll still do okay. Your VCs will still pat you on the back for a job well done, and so on. And so that's one. If you target a large market, there may not be an external forcing function that's, well, forces you to do more beyond this one market. The second, I think, is, well, companies reflect their founders, and founders tend to have certain experiences, often again in one vertical. It just so happens that for me in particular, I can only speak about myself. I've just spent again over a decade in this stuff, and I've done everything from write code for complex data pipelines to sitting next to the finance person, watching them download and upload CSVs from one system to another. And so it ends up being a really difficult technical problem. But in this case, at least in our case, it's simply fueled by my past experience and desires. So markets are large enough. You don't have to do this. In our case, well, I've been a buyer of these systems, and it's a very personal quest.
yeah, that's great. As you look to get into new customers, what's the sales process like for your company? I mean, everybody's trying to get into different markets. Enterprise, B2B is one area. What's some insights that you can share that's worked for you?
There's no sort of magic spell one can just cast and have things happen. But for us, we are B2B. There's no reason why we're not B2C. We just haven't focused on that segment yet. I think we have some B2C customers, but they're by and large B2B. Really, for us, there's a classic B2B sales motion. People hop onto a call, we run a demo for them, and then we go from there. Sometimes there's more people to wrangle for a bigger demo with decision makers and so on. Very classic B2B stuff. And sometimes there's a pilot, especially if it's a big public company. We may do a paid pilot with them, and then there's a contract and terms, and then signatures, and we're off to the races. So nothing shocking there as far as the sales motion. Very typical
So
B2B
just picking
playbook.
up the phones, sending out the emails,
Yep,
driving the pipeline, building the funnel, working the process, closing the deals.
exactly
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
claim any spice or particular excitement with it.
Yeah, no, I think the lesson that we continue to hear is, for many founders that we've talked to at various stages, obviously, but picking up the phone is some of the biggest responses we get. It's what's your secret sauce? The secret sauce was advice I got from the VC firm that invested in us that basically said cold outreach, hit LinkedIn, pick up the phone. You got to make your own luck, get after
Yep.
it, see what happens. So
Yeah, the big thing, that stuff tends to be pretty prescribed. The big thing, of course, is having a product worth buying, right? Especially today. People
yeah,
are way more, again, I've been in this stuff in startups for a while. People are way more budget conscious today. And you're asking someone to justify going to their head of finance, asking for a budget allocation, which means they'll have to say no to other tools if they buy yours. This was
hmm
way less true during the zero interest rate phase, the few years of that, especially during COVID. But again, the going to market stuff tends to be pretty prescribed. The product that can stand out tends to be the major um, weapon one can wield to close
yeah,
the deal.
cool. As you look into 2024, what's on the roadmap? What are you excited about?
You mean for us, or you mean the general
Yeah,
market?
for you.
Well, all sorts of product stuff I can't talk about, unfortunately, or I suppose I could, but I won't. But for us, again, our mission is make data accessible, and well, there's a lot that falls under that beyond just moving data between systems. So we've got lots of stuff that I won't talk about just yet, uh, coming down the pipe. And it really is simply all about saving people headaches of dealing with multiple vendors.
AI is integrating into every area and it seems like
Mm.
almost every system. Can you talk about AI and is it any part of your future?
Probably yes. We do have a product that will be using it. However, One curious thing I've noticed about companies plugging AI into everything is I'm not sure about the success rates of those products. And so I think for some things like writing code, we use this internally. We use AI assistants to write code. They're very helpful. Code is a very prescribed domain. It's a very well specified one. But certainly for other areas, like, oh, here's AI to help you write a document, for example. Maybe you're sharing something internally or publishing something on your website. I think all that's done is just drive a lot of junk to be generated. And well, I'm not sure we want to be associated with that. And so I think the jury's out on how much of a killer app is AI per se. I think AI applied to very specific verticals, yes, maybe the legal industry, certainly writing code. So, no, we're not just rushing to embrace AI per se. There are a couple of very specific use cases that are technical that we'll be having AI for.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah, it's the jury is still out. We're seeing a lot of use cases for it, but at the end of the day, what problem is it really solving? And
Exactly. Yeah, I think the VCs are certainly going crazy over it. But then again, you've seen this record play a million times over. There's always some trend everyone's chasing, and I
yeah,
do wonder again. There's a lot of the AI stuff makes for really great demos, but the problem is if you have some sort of error rate in there, right? So you'll show the ideal case in your demo, but then your user 10%, 15%, maybe 20% of the time gets junk output or output that's obviously wrong. These are probabilistic systems. It's worth asking a question, what CIO or what business is okay with that sort of error rate? Not
yeah,
many.
yeah,
And this is, I think, a dirty secret is waiting to be unfurled after the hype dies down. It takes a lot of
yeah,
effort to make something called AI that's completely trustworthy as well, in a generic sense. So
yeah.
this is something I think we're just very cautious about, hence being targeted.
Great. Well, looking forward to catching up with you as you get into the new year and the next couple of years to see the progress of what's happening with your product. It sounds like you got some exciting things coming, which I'm sure you'll be able to share more of
Mhm.
in the near term. Let's switch gears here a little bit. I'm going to just personally ask you a couple of questions, two, three questions that will, share a little bit more about you with the audience. So, for you, what's a lesson, not necessarily a lesson, but maybe some advice you got from another founder that you felt was priceless, that's helped you, that's worth sharing with the listeners?
Mm, I wish I had an answer here. I actually don't think I do. I think maybe the best advice is probably given by YC, which again, it sounds
Yeah.
so trite, but they do have a slogan called or titled "Make Something People Want," which is such a simply stated slogan, and they keep repeating it, and you go, "Well, this is so obvious," but the reason they do is because so many people just get this part wrong. Many people build something sort of like I did back in 2013. We're hoping to build the next WhatsApp, but really we didn't speak to any users. We
Right.
built something we thought people wanted rather than something people actually wanted. It
Yeah.
ends up being pretty difficult to build something people want and will pay money for. And that's the slogan that's worth drilling into one's head, if I had to pick one.
Yeah. That's great. I always thought it was build something people need, but
Yes, I think that's probably more to the point. I think for B2B, that's probably the slogan. I think B2C, right? People, individuals have their wants and desires and fashions and so on. But for B2B, I would endorse your rephrasing.
um, where do you go when you need to innovate, think creatively, you know, come up with big ideas? Where do you go physically to make that happen? For some, it's jumping in the shower. For others, it's something different. What's worked for you?
Mm, I wish I had a set place I could go to that would result in idea generation. I think it's probably, again, probably in the shower or the gym, really places where one is completely isolated from interruptions. I think sitting at one's desk on a screen, especially if you're a founder, I mean, the day is just an endless stream of emails and messages and requests for interruption and disasters and so on. So certainly shower thoughts have been actually a big source of ideas for sure.
Yeah,
Being isolated produces
we've heard that.
something.
We've heard that a lot. We've heard that a lot about the shower. Some it's about running. Some it's about physically moving. And so my thought is, Well, if you can get your best ideas in the areas or the place that you go to, whether it's a shower or running, why not run 5 times a day or take 5 showers a day? Maybe you get 5 times the answers that you need. But I don't know if it works like that.
Well, yeah, I'm
But
not quite sure because at the end of the day, you still need to do work as well, right? This is
right.
actually, and this is perhaps a bit of a serious response. You do need to just somehow balance your time between actually executing and producing work and thinking as well. I mean, 5 showers a day may also result in you looking like a prune every Zoom call you're on. So maybe that's ill-advised for that reason. But there is the more solemn responsive. I think it's just also tricky to figure out one's time. I still don't have a good recipe to follow regarding splitting my time between thinking and producing.
Yeah. So, how do you stay positive or keep the perspective in the up and down journey of running a startup?
One is simply acknowledging that these things take a long time. There's really no such thing as well building a startup and everything's grand and big and huge within a year. Once in a while it happens, but usually not. So just assume you're in it with a slog. Acknowledging this upfront really helps deal with any tough times. And then more saliently, for those dealing with any tough days, my best advice is just talk to your customers. If you're going through a tough time, it's really validating to realize that, hang on, people do rely on you. If you go out of business, you will be messing up some people's lives. It's sort of like, parents know this by default. If they screw something up, well, their kids rely on them. And once you're a parent, well, tough luck. You're serving this kid, whether you like it or not, whether it's a bad day or a good day. This is it. This is your life. And so it goes for being a founder, at least professionally. Your professional life, I mean. Simply talk to your customers. If you're having a bad day, just get a customer on a call and ask them, why are they using you? It's really amazing what sort of psychological effect that has. Just a reminder that the stuff you're doing matters can mean a lot.
Yeah. And business is a psychological game as much as it is, a fiscal game where you're trying to generate capital. We've heard other founders talk about the responses they get from their customers that send them an email, and then they take all the positive emails they get from their customers and they save it in a file. And when they get in those sort of down moments, just go and look at all the great things that, have been said about their product or about them, and kind of gives you a little bit of a psychological boost in those moments that we all have,
For sure.
building companies.
For sure. I think that there must be some sort of common human tendency here. It's the same way if I text my mom for a call randomly, her day's made. That's it. She just needs no more from the day. It's done. Her son texted her. She's good to go. I think there's something similar. Again, I think everyone wants to feel relevant, and it's worth, if you have customers, well, you are, and it's easy to remind yourself of this fact by just talking to them.
Yeah, really cool. Well, on that note, really appreciate your time and spending with us today, and for all of our listeners for listening. It means the world to me. Ghalib, if someone wants to get a hold of you or find your company, where do they go?
You can go to our website, www.polycom, or check out our LinkedIn page if you'd like to contact us through that.
That's perfect. Well, there you have it. Great. Look forward to catching up with you in the future as things continue to grow and prosper within your company. And really excited to see the new innovations that are coming about within the organization. My name is Jake Aaron Villarreal. I'm signing off for now, but until the next episode, can't wait to catch up with you all then. Until then, take care. Before we wrap up, I want to give a big shout out to all the entrepreneurs that have joined to make this podcast possible, and for all the listeners for listening. It means the world to me that you chose to spend your time with us today. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, signing off for now, but can't wait to connect with you all soon on the next episode. Take care. This show is sponsored by Match Relevant, a company that helps venture-backed startups find the best people in the market, and they do it in 3 simple steps. First, they sit down with founders to understand their story. Second, they tell their story into multiple candidate channels. And third, they schedule interviews within 48 hours. Find us at matchrelevant.com to learn more about how we do it.